What's up, guys? It's your boy, back with another video. This one is the Beginner's Guide to Retatrutide, created by Elijah Smith, yours truly, for you, the members of the More Peps, More Reps, which just made the name that, so I hope you guys like it. More Peps, More Reps school community for educational purposes only in the context of research, not medical advice. So, this is going to be a comprehensive guide to Retatrutide, an introduction for anybody who is interested in learning about this amazing peptide. Hopefully, it'll be in simple enough that you can understand it terms. I tried to keep it pretty layman's terms for you guys because it gets pretty scientific. But I'm going to go over the important considerations that you should be aware of before starting it, the studied dosage ranges and approaches to your specific individual dosages, some best practices and practical tips that can help maximize results and minimize adverse effects or side effects, and potential benefits, possible side effects that you should be aware of so that you're not going in blind. You kind of know what could occur, and reconstitution instructions, proper storage. So whether you just are interested in learning about it or you're actually about to start, hopefully this will make you a little more confident that you know what to expect, you know what you're going into, and be prepared for it. Before we can get into the juicy meat of this information, we need to roll the disclaimers. This document is provided strictly for educational and research purposes only. This information contained within is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease and should not be taken as medical advice. Retatrutide and other peptides we discuss in this community are research compounds, not approved for human consumption by the FDA or other regulatory bodies. Nothing in this guide should be used as a substitute for professional medical consultation, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult a licensed healthcare provider before making any decisions related to your health, medications, or supplements. The author assumes no responsibility or liability for any misuse, misinterpretation, or applications of the information provided. So I'm going to upload this Word document here that you're looking at alongside the video recording. So if you come in here and you want to click, it'll just take you to each section of these. I'll also include some timestamps so you can skip through the video because I'm impatient too. I wouldn't want to watch a long video like this. So you can either scroll through the written portion and just read through these sections, click which one you want to be taken to, or you can click on the timestamps and be taken to where I talk about it in the video. So before we hop right into using the peptide, let's discuss a little bit about what Retatrutide actually is. Retatrutide is the newest generation of the GLP-1 peptides drugs that are used to treat obesity, type 2 diabetes, and some other medical conditions like fatty liver disease. If you've heard of things like Ozempic, Wegovy, those were the first generation. Well, there's older ones, but the first very popular one, Semaglutide. Then you've got things like Mounjaro, Zepbound, which were the next generation, Tirzepatide. And now you have Retatrutide, which is still in clinical trials. It's in phase 3, so this is not an FDA-approved medication. That's an important thing to be aware of. So it does share pathways and mechanisms with Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, Zepbound, but it is not the exact same as those. It is unique and shouldn't be thought of as the same thing, because when you tell someone that it's a GLP-1, they go, oh, like Ozempic? Which, yes, somewhat, but no. So this is the difference between the three. Semaglutide or Ozempic is just a single agonist of just the GLP-1 receptors. Only hits the GLP-1. Then they came out with Tirzepatide, which was a dual agonist, making it better than Semaglutide. It acted on GLP-1 and GIP. And then Retatrutide, triple agonist, acts on GLP-1, GIP, and glucagon. So, semaglutide and tirzepatide are FDA approved. They're being prescribed for obesity and type 2 diabetes and things, while retatrutide is still in clinical phase 3 trials, so it's not FDA approved yet, but it is being fast-tracked and looks to be almost undeniably going to be FDA approved within the next few years. Probably 2027 will when it will be start being prescribed, maybe even later. But the effects and results from the trials have been extremely positive. It's looked to be better than the previous two, and FDA approval looks imminent. So now let's move on to how these types of compounds work. All of them act through mimicking hormones that are already present in our body. GLP-1, glucagon-like peptide 1, GIP, glucose-dependent insulinotropic polypeptide, and glucagon. These are all endogenously naturally produced in your body, and then these peptides are injected exogenously to mimic and agonize those endogenous hormones. So the effects of agonizing the GLP-1 receptor is that it stimulates insulin secretion after meals. So in response to glucose from food, it causes insulin to be secreted to bring blood sugar down. Then it suppresses the release of glucagon, which also, because glucagon raises blood sugar in times of fasting, so it stimulates or suppresses glucagon. So this helps to lower blood sugar after meals for proper homeostasis and balance. GLP-1 also slows gastric emptying and motility, which just means that it slows down the digestion in your intestines of how fast food moves through your stomach and intestines. So what that does is make you feel full faster and for longer periods of time. GLP-1 also promotes feelings of satiety and reduces appetite, like mentally. So it acts on the axis between your brain and your stomach to where your stomach tells your brain that you're full faster and you're satisfied, essentially. So when people say that it got rid of their food noise, that's because it's directly affecting your brain to reduce the appetite, telling you that you're full and that you don't need more food. So that's how it reduces the food consumption. And GLP-1 also has some neuroprotective and nervous system protective effects, which is pretty cool. Now we move on to GIP, glucose-dependent insulinotropic polypeptide, which is a mouthful, so GIP it is. It also promotes insulin secretion in response to food or glucose in your system. That also works synergistically with GLP-1 to regulate your blood sugar levels and bring those down after meals. It reduces the stomach acid secretion, which further slows your digestion and gastric motility. So if it's going to contribute to the slowing of movement through your intestines and stomach. It stimulates the release of glucagon. So GLP-1 suppressed it, but GIP stimulates the release of glucagon when extended periods of fasting or when your blood sugar gets too low, so that it brings your blood sugar up, keeps it, essentially they're just keeping your blood sugar levels stable. GIP also has anti-nausea properties, which is super important because GLP-1 is known to cause nausea. So having strong effects on GIP being anti-nausea helps to get rid of that side effect that was present in like Ozempic and Semaglutide. GIP also may promote and support bone formation. Pretty neat. Now we move on to the effects of glucagon, which is the receptor that makes retatrutide unique from the others. So glucagon directly counteracts insulin, so it's stimulating release of glucose into the bloodstream when blood sugar gets too low, which is called hypoglycemia, which is actually very dangerous. So glucagon is very important for stopping you from being hypoglycemic, and it brings your blood sugar up into the normal range to homeostasis of regulation in your blood sugar levels. So it signals the liver to release stored glucose to create new glucose from other sources, which this is known as glycogenolysis and gluconeogenesis. So as I was saying, this helps keep blood sugar in a normal range in times of fasting, like when you're asleep, so that you don't go hypoglycemic in your sleep. Glucagon also increases your resting energy expenditure, which is super cool for losing weight, like Retatrutide, losing fat, because you're burning more calories doing nothing just by taking Retatrutide. It directly promotes lipolysis, which is the stored fat, breaking down stored fat into fatty acids that you can then use as energy. So it's directly promoting fat loss, essentially. So converting stored fat into free-form fatty acids that you can then shuttle into your mitochondria for energy. Then it tells your body to use those, to oxidize those free-form fatty acids, which means burn them. So it diverts fatty acids from being stored as fat into being used as fuel. So stops the storage of new fat and uses fat as fuel. So it's directly improving your body's fat loss capabilities. And it also inhibits lipogenesis, which is storing new fat. So it switches off the key enzyme involved in turning carbs, protein, other nutrients that you've consumed into fat. So then you use the fat as, you stop the storage of nutrients as fat. Awesome. Now let's discuss the unique characteristics of Retatrutide that makes it different and better than the others. So, as I briefly said at the beginning, Retatrutide is a triple receptor agonist on GLP-1, GIP, and glucagon. So, Semaglutide acted on just one, GLP-1. Tirzepatide was GLP-1 and GIP, but the inclusion of glucagon agonism is the major differentiator between Retatrutide and those others that makes it better. So, activating the glucagon receptor increases energy expenditure at rest. You're burning more calories just by taking Retatrutide. Stimulating glucagon directly promotes fat burning, lipolysis, freeing up stored fat into fatty acids to be used as energy. And it then tells your body to prioritize that freed up fat as the main energy source. So it's forcing you to burn more fat and calories. This occurs both in subcutaneous fat, which is the fat under your skin that you see, like belly fat, that's subcutaneous fat. And it also does it in liver fat, which is dangerous, which you've heard of, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Makes Retatrutide a perfect drug for combating or reversing fatty liver disease, which is dangerous. So overall, the other GLPs like Semaglutide and Tirzepatide, for the most part, they rely on making you consume less food and calories because they blunt your appetite and slow your digestion so much. So they kind of rely on the decreased calorie consumption to induce weight loss. But Retatrutide, it does that, but it also speeds up your metabolism so that you can, and directly promotes fat burning. So you can actually eat more food and still lose weight and body fat. More weight and body fat than the others according to the clinical trials. In less time too. So this unique feature is what sets you up for much better success in the long term, because it helps you avoid the metabolic adaptation that comes from long periods of under consuming calories. So if you take the others and you're consuming low levels of calories for a long time, your metabolism will slowly come down and adjust to that the lower calories, because it thinks you're starving and it doesn't want to get rid of energy sources it thinks it might need to use in the future to keep you alive. So by using Retatrutide and keeping your calorie intake relatively higher than the others, you kind of avoid this metabolic adaptation that would slow your metabolism down. So you're still going to be able to lose the weight and the fat, but you're going to keep your metabolism at a more efficient rate than the others would allow you to. So that reasoning is why people usually run into weight loss stalls more commonly with Semaglutide and Tirzepatide, and it's less common with Retatrutide. So it's allowed Retatrutide to outperform the others in total weight loss in clinical trials, even in shorter periods of time. And they also, participants maintained the weight loss after completing the trials, unlike the others where most of the weight was regained afterwards, if not all the weight or even more than they lost during the trial. Now let's go into the benefits that Retatrutide can provide. You've got a reduced appetite, less food noise, less cravings. That's a big one. That's the big one probably, which those altogether give you better diet adherence. So it's also going to make you feel full and satisfied, satiated, sooner, faster, and for longer periods of time after each meal. Induces weight and fat loss, that's kind of a given, and improvements in body composition. So also significant reductions in waist circumference in the trials. So your metabolism and caloric expenditure are going to increase at rest. It's going to severely reduce liver and visceral fat, those are dangerous fats, so reducing that is awesome. It's going to improve your blood sugar levels and the way your body regulates your blood sugar, so improvements in blood sugar, improvements in insulin sensitivity, which is really important, especially in body composition and nutrient partitioning. And that brings me into the next one, improved nutrient partitioning. So it's going to prioritize fat and stored fat for fuel rather than using the carbohydrates or proteins that you intake in your diet. It improves almost all blood work markers, blood pressure, lipid parameters, fasting blood sugar, fasting insulin. All these are seen improved in the trials. And this one's not like scientifically supported, but anecdotally, a ton of people have reductions in any addictive tendencies they have, like alcohol, nicotine, caffeine addictions, any other substance abuse or things you're getting dopamine from. They report that the Retatrutide makes them not do it as much or not feel like they need to do it as much. And it's probably because of the dopamine regulation that GLP-1 and all these hormones have in your brain, the receptors in your brain. So it regulates these habits better. But it's not all 100% positive. There are some possible risks and side effects that you should be aware of before you just jump right into it. So some of the most common side effects that came from Retatrutide use are digestive or GI issues. Things like constipation, diarrhea, stomach discomfort, nausea, injection site reactions. That's pretty much expected with anything you're injecting. It's a possibility that there'll be a little reaction or itchiness, red spot after injecting. So that one I don't think is too serious, but it is a common side effect. Headache, vomiting, dehydration. Dehydration's a big one. We'll talk about that a little more later. Heartburn or acid reflux, increase in resting heart rate, skin sensitivity. This one, people say it's just like a general discomfort. It feels like kind of a sunburn on your skin when things touch it. So, interesting. And possibility for disrupted sleep. It's important to note that most of these are transient and they'll go away on their own. So it's nothing too serious most of the time. They occur most often when you're either first starting or when you increase the dose, and they likely won't remain for long extended periods. But if they do, you should definitely discontinue use and consult a medical care professional. Now let's start with the dosage and titration. So in clinical trials, the studied dosage ranges were 0.5 milligrams, 1 milligram, 2 milligram, 4 milligrams, 8 milligrams, and 12 milligrams. And that's all weekly doses, and the clinical trials all gave it in one weekly dose. But we'll talk about some alternative options for that. So the recommended starting dose from me and most people, I would say, is between 0.5 and 2 milligrams per week. It's going to depend on what you want to do and your risk tolerance, whether you start at the lowest 0.5 or you start at 2, because some people can start at 2 and be perfectly fine, not have any side effects, and then go from there. Some people start at 2 and they get all the side effects. They get nauseous, they throw up. So if you're risk adverse and you're not wanting to run into any side effects, my advice would be to start at 0.5 milligrams per week and assess how you individually tolerate the compound. You could even split that up into two 0.25 milligram injections on, say, Monday and Thursday. Microdose it, just adjust to it for a little bit, see how that affects you, and move on from there. So the reason that you may want to split up the dose here is that the more frequently you inject, the more stable your levels will be. So peaks and troughs is what it's called. So when you inject one big bolus, as they call it, one big dose once per week, you get a really high peak, and then it comes down and starts to trail off into the trough, which is the lowest serum before you inject again. So when you do that, you get a high peak, your highest concentration, and then it'll come down and you'll get the lowest concentration. So then doing 2 injections, say, you get a slightly lower peak, but then it comes down and you inject it again, slightly lower peak. So you're not getting the super high peaks, but you're also not getting the super low troughs where you're not getting much effects at all down there. So it keeps the levels more stable the more you inject, but it's up to you whether you can try them both and see which you prefer, because it's multiple injections. If it's 2, 3, 4 times a week, up to you. But the more injections, it's going to be better for avoiding side effects, just because you don't get that super high peak and you also don't get the super low trough. So when you get a super high peak, that's when you could get nauseous or throw up or not be able to eat at all. And when you get the super low trough, that's when you could get really hungry or cravings come back. So multiple injections can kind of mitigate those downsides to the one big dose. But some people do prefer the large doses because of the stronger effects from that big peak. So you can test those out, see which one you prefer, see which works best for you. One dose works great for some people. Microdosing every day works great for other people. It's really up to you which one works best for you. You kind of have to trial and error that. And titrating up, this is important. So I would recommend staying at each dosage range for at least 2 to 3 weeks before you escalate upwards, because Retatrutide has about a 6-day half-life, which means that it's going to build on the previous dose every time you inject it. So you're at each dosage range, it can take up to 4 weeks to reach the maximum concentration in your system for that dose. So by week 4, that's when, if you started at 2 milligrams, it could take until week 4 for you to feel the full effects of what 2 milligrams has to offer you. So then by week 3 on each dose, the concentration's around 80% of the maximum that it will be. So by week 3, you'll have somewhat of a good idea what that dose will feel like, and then you could move up a little bit. If you've got no side effects present by week 3, you could move up by 0.5 milligram or 1 milligram, and then repeat that process. So this is what an example titration schedule would look like if you started at 1 milligram per week. So those first 3 weeks, you would take 1 milligram. It doesn't matter how many injections you do it in, just as long as 1 milligram per week, say you do, and then no side effects, and it's not strong enough, you're wanting to move up. Then week 4, you move up to, say, 2 milligrams per week. See how that affects you. Stay on that for a couple more weeks. Then week 7, you move up to 3 milligrams per week. If the effects still good, no side effects, and it's not strong enough for you still, after week 9, you move up to 4 milligrams, and so on and so on. You don't have to keep moving up. You can, if 3 milligrams is perfect for you to adhere to your diet, and that's the effects you want, you just stay there. But titrating too fast is one of the most common mistakes that I see people do that causes side effects. They take a dose for 1 week or 2 weeks tops, and they're thinking, I'm feeling nothing, I'm moving up. And then they take a bigger dose the 3rd week, and it builds on those 2 previous. So the serum concentration in their body is much higher than they realize, and then they get whacked with the side effects and the nausea and throwing up, can't eat. So be patient, start low and go slow. That is my advice. Now, let's move on to the 2 approaches to titration. So there are 2 approaches you can take when you use Retatrutide. There's no right or wrong option here, and it's up to you which one is the best option for you. So the things like how fast you're wanting to achieve your weight loss or fat loss goals, your risk tolerance for running into side effects, and other things. So the 2 options are the lowest effective dose or the highest tolerable dose. So let's discuss the differences between that. The lowest effective dose is more so for people who are more risk adverse. Maybe they don't have as much weight to lose, and they just want some mild effects from it that can help them adhere to their diet. They get some of the benefits from it, but they don't want to run into side effects or risk that. So they're okay with being patient with it, and they want to avoid side effects. So you start at a very low dose, 0.5 to 1 milligram per week, and you only titrate up if there's no effects at all. So if you start at 1 milligram and that's all you need, you just stay with this. Stay at 1 milligram until you're either not getting the effects anymore that you want, or you want a little bit more. So then you move up only slightly to the dose where you're getting those effects again. So say you move up to 1.5 or 2 milligrams, and this approach is best for when your diet is dialed in, you're doing all the lifestyle things right, and you just need a little help, maybe cutting some food noise out or adhering to your diet optimally. So then you remain at that lowest effective dose for as long as possible, maybe even indefinitely. So you only move up if your weight loss stalls or the effects taper off or anything. So you're staying at the lowest dose that is effective in providing the benefits that you're seeking. So this is ideal for long-term use and sustainability, and it also financially saves you more money than going up a lot, which takes us into the highest tolerable dose approach. So this is for the more impatient, less risk-adverse people who they're willing to risk some side effects if they can get the most effects out of the drug, and they might have more weight to lose and they want to lose it in a faster time frame, and they might need the stronger effects from the drug to adhere to their diet. So using this method, if you're going to do it, you need to understand that side effects are more likely as you keep going up. So you need to be okay with the possibility of having some uncomfortable times or days if you continue rapidly moving up in dose. So you still want to start low at 1 to 2 milligrams a week just to assess the tolerance you have. And then the difference with this approach is that after 3 to 4 weeks on each dose, if there's no side effects, you keep going up. You go up to, say, 3 or 4 milligrams a week. Then, say, 3 to 4 milligrams, you stay on that for 3 to 4 weeks. You don't have any side effects. You go up again, maybe to 5 or 6 milligrams. And then you go up as high as you can until you run into either intolerable side effects or you reach a dose where you're content with the effects you're getting, the benefits. So you go up to the highest dose that you can tolerate without side effects that you're getting good effects from. If you do go up too much and you hit some side effects that are pretty intolerable, you need to taper back the dosage down to the one you were at previously and stay there for a little bit until the side effects subside, and you just stay on that for a little bit, and then you can try and go up again if you would like to. One thing about this, I definitely would not recommend ever going above 12 milligrams in a week. That's the highest dose studied in any of the clinical trials or settings. All right, now we're going to move into reconstituting and storing your Retatrutide. So depending on where you buy from, Retatrutide is going to come in various milligrams per vial. Like my trusted source that I like, Peptira, which is linked in our community in the discussion page, Peptira, code Eli, shameless plug, 10% off. They offer 10 milligrams, 20 milligrams, and 30 milligram vials. So depending where you purchase from, you can purchase from wherever you want to purchase from, but the vial sizes will be different. Some of the common ones are like 5 or 6 milligrams, 10, 12, 15, 20, 30. So the vial amount of Retatrutide that you purchase will change how much bacteriostatic water you want to reconstitute it with, probably. Not that it really matters, but making the math easy to calculate your dosage is just the optimal way that I like to do it, so that it's easy to get the right dosage and the math is simple then. So Making the math simple, I just like to add a 0 to the end of the milligram amount and then use that number of units of backwater for reconstitution. So say you have a 10 milligram vial, I like to reconstitute that with 100 units of backwater, which is 1 milliliter. Same way, if you have a 12 milligram vial, I like to use 120 units of backwater or 1.2 milliliters. 20 milligram vial, 200 units of backwater. You see where I'm going with this? That way, every 10 units on your syringe is 1 milligram of Retatrutide. So that just makes the math really easy. If you're doing 1 milligram a week, you just inject 10 units. If you're doing 2 milligrams a week, you could do 10 units Monday, 10 units Thursday, or 20 units Monday. It just makes it simple that 10 units is a milligram. It's not required, just a way that I like to make it easy to remember. So before reconstituting it, your vials are going to be shipped to you in a lyophilized powder, which is just a little white puck at the bottom of those vials, a little white powder. And those you can store at room temperature. They'll be good for months. In the refrigerator, they'll be good for well over a year, probably years, plural. And if you put them in a deep freezer, probably over a decade, they'll be good before reconstitution. So that's storage condition in powder form. They're pretty stable, pretty durable. After you reconstitute them, they must be refrigerated, or else they will go bad fast. So it's also best to store them away from light. If you have like a little container, you can put them in your refrigerator. That's what I do. So after reconstituting with backwater, it's advised to use them in 60 days. A lot of people stretch it longer with no issues. Degradation's not going to happen within 60 days. So personally, as long as it's stored properly and you're using the right sanitary practices when you're drawing in, reconstituting and everything, I think 90 days is fine to use it within 90 days. So it's up to you though. If you want to use it within 30, that's probably the best, most advised option, but I would be comfortable up to 90 days. So after you've reconstituted it, before you dose it the first time, you're going to need to draw air into your syringe and inject it into the vial to be able to draw your dose out, because there's a vacuum in the vial, so you have to break that vacuum by injecting air to stabilize the pressure and then draw out your dose. So then you just draw out your calculated desired dose, 10 units. If you're 1 milligram, you do 10 units, and enjoy. Now, these are just some best practices when using Retatrutide that will help you get optimal results and will minimize the risks of side effects. So the first one, super important. Hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. So Retatrutide, the same way it makes you not think about eating food, it makes you not think about drinking liquids. So you need to remind yourself to stay hydrated and make sure you have a proper electrolyte balance, which a lot of people means they need to add an electrolyte supplement to their daily routine. So make sure you're getting potassium, magnesium, and sodium. So the lack of proper hydration and electrolyte balance is directly what causes a lot of Retatrutide side effects like the nausea, headaches, digestion issues. So hydration is crucial for this. The next best practice is to go into this following a planned and structured diet that prioritizes protein. So often when people start taking Retatrutide, they start consuming less food. It's kind of a given. It can be because you forget to eat. It just makes you think about food less. It makes you not hungry as often, or you just simply can't eat as much food in each sitting because you get full so much faster. So these are all common effects from Retatrutide, and that can lead you to consuming less calories and protein. And that drastic underconsumption of that is ultimately what leads to muscle loss and micronutrient deficiencies. And then finally, you get a worse off body composition than if you were eating enough protein and calories and just following a structured plan that keeps you in a good caloric deficit. So going into Retatrutide with a planned, structured diet that you're following to get enough calories, enough protein, and enough other micronutrients and macronutrients, it just optimizes that you're not going to make yourself worse off. You're not going to lose muscle as likely, and it just makes you much more optimized approach to using this rather than just eating when you feel like it, and that can lead you to some deficiencies. Prioritize getting in that protein first when you're eating, because you're going to get full faster. So if you eat the carbs and the other snacks or whatever you have during the day before you get your protein in, then you're just full and you're not going to want to eat the protein, or you just can't eat the protein. And that can cause you to run into that muscle loss and the nutrient deficiencies. So a way to get around the fullness that comes is just splitting up your daily intake into smaller, more frequent meals. So you avoid the overly full feeling if you were eating bigger meals. So like if you switch from 2 or 3 big meals where you're just stuffed full afterwards to like 4 or 5, maybe even 6 small, more frequent meals with adequate protein still, so that it adds up over the day, but 4 to 6 smaller meals throughout the day, then you're not stuffed full and you're happy to eat again at the next one. So it just makes it much more optimal for not being overly full and being able to still get in enough calories and protein. And then finally, if being too full is the problem you're running into, finding some lower volume, high protein foods is a great way to get around that fullness. So things like lean meats and seafoods, beef jerky, even if you need to add like a whey protein shake or one of those ready to drink Fairlife protein shakes, things that are high protein but not super filling, so you can get in enough protein. Next up is resistance training. So when you're on a GLP like Retatrutide is, muscle loss is in the clinical trials prevalent. They're not resistance training. So you need to be resistance training on this to make sure that your body knows it needs to keep that muscle. So even if you're consuming adequate protein, if you're not resistance or weight training at least 2 or 3 times a week, you might lose muscle. So make sure to be doing that. Tell your body, I want this hard-earned muscle that I built up over the years. So it's absolutely crucial for maintaining that body composition that you want to have by the end of when you're done using it. Next up, we have be patient. As I mentioned before, the concentration of Retatrutide at each dosage range can take up to 4 weeks at that new dose until you reach the peak concentration for that dose. So don't get impatient after a week or 2 that it's not doing enough. Just ride it out. Be patient. Give it at least another week before you go up again. So I'd say 2 to 3 weeks minimum before you go up again. So that's a good way to minimize running into side effects. And it's also, weight loss should not be a rapid thing where you're just trying to rush to get it done as fast as possible, because then you're not building up sustainable habits, and also that's when things like loose skin can happen. Also, being impatient using this is a surefire way to run straight into some very unpleasant effects from it. Another thing is that you should use it as a tool, not a crutch. So use it to set up good habits that you can sustain even if you decide to stop taking it. So many people, when they get on, they just rely on the fact that they're not as hungry anymore, and they can eat less calories and not be hungry. So they're relying too much on Retatrutide, and they're not setting up a proper diet that they'll be able to follow long term. So they're relying on the drug to make it easier to adhere to their diet and to lose weight, but they're relying on the benefits from it that they're not always going to be there if you stop taking it. So that's when, if you come off without setting up proper habits, you can just regain all the weight you lost. Last but not least, we have an exit strategy. This is the final step of your journey with Retatrutide, and it's one of the most important, I would say. This is what you do when you've reached your goal, whether that be your goal weight or your goal body fat. So this is the very important step to carry out to properly maintain those results after you've reached your goal. So there's 2 options here, and you can choose which one you want to go with. You either drop down to a lower maintenance dose and stay on that long term to keep some of the benefits, but at a much lower dose than you were using, or you slowly taper down and completely discontinue and come off of Retatrutide. So in both scenarios, the slow taper titration downwards is important over several weeks to allow yourself and your body to adjust to the returning of that appetite. So the reduction in appetite suppression. So over several weeks, you want to adjust to the returning of the appetite so that you don't binge and get starving and regain all the weight you lost. So you can taper down by 0.5 milligram or 1 milligram every couple weeks, and then until you reach either that lower maintenance dose that you want to stay on, then you just stay on that dose every week until to maintain the results, or you continue tapering down by 0.5 milligram or 1 milligram every couple weeks until you're at 0 and you stop completely. Either one of these is fine. It's just up to you whether you want to continue using it and injecting yourself, or you want off, you're done for now. You cycle off, maybe you start again in a few months or something, but either one of these is fine. And what you need to do is just adjust along the way to how you're feeling, how your weight and your body are reacting to tapering off the dose. So if you go down 1 week and you get ravenously hungry, maybe you don't want to keep tapering down until you've adjusted to that appetite. So this is just tapering down helps to avoid regaining weight and regressing the progress that you made over the long period of time. So now we are done. This is the summary of what we talked about and the key takeaways from this. First off, Retatrutide, what is it? Triple receptor agonist, GLP-1, GIP, and glucagon receptors. What's it going to do? Decrease your appetite, slow down your digestion, makes you feel full faster for longer. It's going to improve your blood sugar, improve your insulin sensitivity, improve your nutrient partitioning, and it's going to increase your metabolism and the amount of calories you're burning at rest. So the benefits and the possible side effects, we discussed those before. Go back and watch that section again if you want to know more about that, or read that section. So there are a lot of benefits. There's a few possible side effects. Those are in here. Always consult a medical professional if you've got any serious medical conditions or any other medications you might be on that could possibly interact with Retatrutide. Always consult a medical professional. That's the best thing to do if you have any concern over that. Start low, go slow. Start low and go up slow, and be patient. These are two huge ones. Yep, please take those away from this. Prioritize protein and follow a planned, structured diet. That's just the best way to do it to optimize your body composition and not risk losing any muscle while you're on Retatrutide. Next up, hydrate. Super important. Please take that from this as well. Hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. Make sure you're drinking enough water, you're getting proper electrolyte balance every day, and that will help you mitigate any side effects. It will help with digestion, and it'll help you feel good and get the best results. And use Retatrutide to set up good long-term dieting habits. So use the benefits to set up long-term habits even if you stop using it. Then have an exit strategy, which we just talked about. Either taper down to a maintenance dose or taper slowly all the way down and come off. But make sure you know what your exit strategy is, because you don't want to cold turkey quit it. That's a good way for running into that ravenous appetite and regaining a bunch of weight. And as always, this is not medical advice, nor is it intended to replace medical advice. Strictly informational and educational purposes. And the source, if you're looking to buy Retatrutide, the source that I trust, that I looked into heavily, spoke with the owner extensively to make sure that they had high quality, high purity, thoroughly tested Retatrutide and other peptides, is Peptira. If you'd like to purchase any peptides or Retatrutide, this link here takes that. It'll put my code Eli 10% off on everything you buy. And I hope you guys be safe. I hope you now feel better that you know how to use Retatrutide and you know the best practices to get the best results. If you have any more questions, either leave them in the discussion page or reach out to me. I'm happy to answer any questions. If you have any content requests or other peptides that you want to hear about or see a long deep dive like this into, leave those in the discussion section or message me privately. Love you guys.